Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Stars Outlander is a show about Claire Fraser, time-travelling World War II nurse who's now Lady Lallybroch and married to semi-outlaw Jamie Fraser, a Highlander and a prisoner of the British Army. Episode 15, Wentworth Prison, is the penultimate episode of Outlander's first season, and it starts with our lad Jamie met back up with his pal Macquarie, and both of them face the hangman's noose, and start having a witty chat about what happens to you when you die by hanging. This gallows humour, is brought to an end when they drag poor Macquarie off and they give him a stretch. Ouchie. And it all looks grim for Jim, as he's next. But he gets himself a last-minute reprieve when everyone's favourite villain rides in doing a Tywin Lannister and saves the day by calling off the execution. That was lucky for Jamie. Or is it? So he ends up chucked down in a cell where he tries to escape. Meanwhile, Claire has arrived and she's posing as a distant family relation by marriage and doing her Christian duty by checking up on him for the family. And the warden likes this, but he still won't let her see him, so it's back to the drawing board for the rescue plan. Luckily for all involved, turns out Rupert and Angus have been plying jailers with drink and have sussed out there's a window of opportunity where Claire can sneak into the warden's office. So her and Murtaugh sneak in, grab the keys, but they get caught and have to knock out the guard, meaning they've got very little time. Jamie, on the other hand, is having a surprisingly civil time as Black Jack offers him a choice of his own execution if he just admits that he's terrified of Black Jack. Jamie considers it and then refuses, and they end up having a wee bit of a fight. After which, Jack gets a wee bit cross and he beats Jamie's hand into a bloody prosthetic. Meanwhile, Claire does her sneaker-see taffy bit around the prison, stopping only long enough to find and unlock a back door to the cell block. When she finally finds him, she can't get the chains off before Blackjack reappears, and he says he's going to have his thug Marley rape Claire. And she isn't having that, so she wallops Randall, while Jamie ends up killing off Marley. But Big BJ isn't a pushover, and he's about to set about Claire with his hammer, but Jamie proposes a deal of his own. He'll let Blackjack have him if he lets Claire go unharmed. Now, since Jack is all about Jamie, he snaps up the offer, but first he tests Jim's sincerity by making him hold out his hand while he nails it to the table, then gives him a great big snog. After that, he leads Claire away and asks if she's a witch, and she says yes, and she curses him, whispering the date of his death into his ear, and he's a bit weirded out and pushes her through the corpse hole out of the castle. And from there she finds the rest of the rescue party and laments that they failed. Luckily, a local friend, who although he refuses to put his family in danger by openly attacking the prison, when Claire shows him Jamie's mum's pearls, it turns out the guy also had a wee fancy for Jamie's mum, and he gave her those pearls, and that makes it okay. And just then, a yokel arrives with some cows, and Murtaugh suddenly comes up with a plan to rescue Jamie. Hooray! So what did I think? Well, Wentworth Prison is one of the most brutal episodes of Outlander so far, full not only of really nasty physical torture and pain and violence, but very real implications of some really horrid things, both that almost happen and might still be to come. There's also really nice symmetry with the episode, with the one where Claire got interrogated by Blackjack, but now it's Jamie's turn, and the wee scenes between them are really nicely paced, and the action in the episode feels really realistic, where, it'd be quite easy for it to go way over the top and have it go crazy, but instead, it always feels quite down to earth. And there's some sterling acting work is here as well, as Katrina gets down to some proper ugly crying, and Sam gets to look alternately in pain or shedding stoic man tears, whereas Tobias keeps himself mercifully on the right side of making Blackjack a proper pantomime villain. But of course, this is Grumpy Opinions, and I know you didn't come here to hear me saying about how much I love this show. I mean, you know I like it. Of course, I had some grumbles. Now, the first of these might sound a little bit odd, but there's actually a few unresolved Chekhov guns in this episode. Now, a Chekhov's gun has actually nothing to do with Star Trek. It's a thing that Anton Chekhov, the playwright, said, which is, if you have a gun in Act 1 hanging on the wall in a play, in Act 3, somebody better shoot that gun. And if somebody shoots a gun in Act 3 of a play, then there better be one hanging on the wall in Act 1. Now, basically, what this means is that anything that's in the shot or in the show really ought to have a purpose. So, for example, one of the ones is the burning brazier in Jamie's cell. Now, that's way too easy for Jamie to get close to, and utterly impractical for a prison cell. I mean, a prisoner could use that for all kinds of purposes, and I kept thinking that he was going to swing it into the face of Marley or Blackjack, but instead, he actually stands there and then pointedly looks right at it. and then steps away from it at a critical moment. I mean, he actually gives it a proper hard stare for a few seconds, and then nothing. I mean, I don't know, maybe next week, but I don't think so. And the other one is his wee hand-nail interface, because Jamie looks at the nail that's been hammered through his fake hand, and then he reaches over with his good hand to try and get at it. Now, we've seen earlier in the series that Jamie can pull a nail out with his bare fingers before. Now, we know he can do it, so maybe he can still do it now. You know, maybe before his hand got smashed in, so it's more difficult. But this is surely an escape technique, and that nail is a weapon. But no, he just seems to not bother after he touches it. I mean, I know he gave his word to Black Jack, but he's no idiot. You know, if he could kill Black Jack and escape easily, surely he's going to do that. And another thing that bugged me was that Claire ran around in the inside of the prison practically shouting Jamie, and no guards ever noticed. And none of the prisoners ever called the guards over in hope of getting preferential treatment. Now, I know it's a prison, but contrary to popular belief, not all prisons, even in the 18th century, were just waiting areas for folk to get hung. You know, people were in there sometimes for like a few weeks or a couple of months or a few years with some crime. I mean, it's a prison. But anyway, it just seemed a little bit too easy. Also, not getting into the daftness of it, but Claire stuck into a prison long before the days of metal detectors, and Randall later has Marley actually searching her, so presumably she wouldn't get searched when she came in, so she could have had a gun on her. So why didn't she have one? She could have just shot Randall right in the face. I mean, I know, plot, and it would have maybe given her away with a noise, but it just kind of didn't ring true for me. Now, ultimately, these are kind of nitpicking wee things in a really, really good episode, and I can't be alone on being utterly on the edge of my seat for next week, even though I already know how it pans out because I've read the book. So, until then, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions.